much for joining us for an episode of Women Lead TV. My name is Marcy Bro. I'm a branding photographer, and today I'm going to speak with Beverly Boone, who's the executive director for Milestone House. And I'm going to tell you what that is in just a second. But I'm coming from Oceanside, and so is Beverly. And if you don't know where Oceanside, California is, you are missing out, right, Beverly?
Yes. Best
Yeah,
place to live.
it is. Here we are talking on a November day and it's gorgeous outside. So I just feel so grateful to live here. So let me give you a sense of what we're going to do today. So I'm going to interview Beverly, who founded Milestone House more than 30 years ago. And I've gotten to know Beverly and this organization really well because I am one of their board members. And before that, I was a volunteer. And so Milestone House, it's a home for teen kids. It's girls. It started as girls. Now we call them kids. So it's teen kids that are in the foster system. And it's a short-term residential treatment center, meaning that these kids really need to find their permanent house. But for a multitude of reasons, these kids find themselves in this home, typically because they're hard to place in the foster system and always because they're survivors of trauma. I mean, you do not end up in the foster system unless you're surviving some kind of trauma. I know we can all agree on that. So while Beverly runs an organization that can feel kind of heavy and she has lots of stories she can share, what I want to do today is talk to Beverly from a space of what it's like to start and found a nonprofit and has kept it going for over 30 years. So I want to peel back the curtain a little bit and talk to Beverly about how she runs this organization and dig into the brands a little bit. So Beverly, will you tell us where you find yourself today? Not literally Oceanside, as we just talked about, but by a way of introducing yourself, can you just let us know where do we find you in the world today?
Well, I'm still working as the founding executive director of Milestone House. I recently started another company just so I wouldn't get into trouble in my spare time. And that is a training company for people who work in the field of residential care. I'm also the author of 3 books, and I'm planning my next book now. One of my books is called Basic Training for Residential Child Care Workers. And that book is the only comprehensive training manual for people who work with children in residential care.
That's so I'm so glad you started with that because what I really want to talk today, so you find yourself in a situation, Beverly, where you've been running Milestone House. You started it in 1992, so that's well over 30 years now that you've been running Milestone House. And all of us have either done this in our own lives. We've started one way and we've transitioned and we've morphed into something else. So what I know from working with you is you've seen a need and maybe a lack of training. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you've seen a need for people that are working in the space that you're working in. So you decided that you're going to write not one book, but you're working on your third. So where does that come from? Your willingness to supplement what's out there. Like you're kind of taking your leadership role. You're looking around and saying, "Hey, there's no manual for this. Let me write it." So can you talk about that journey and that process of like kind of filling a gap in the space that you're working in?
Well, basically, I recognize that people working in this field, the people who are on the floor, they're called child care workers, or we've morphed that into mental health workers, are not as respected as they should be. They're not as valued as they should be. They're kind of looked at as the low level employees. But my feeling is that they're the most important people that work in residential care. They spend the most time with the children. They form the deepest relationships with the children. They have the opportunity through practicing what I call milieu therapy to be role models for the kids, to reward positive behavior, to set boundaries for the kids, to set good boundaries for themselves. And I think it's important to elevate that profession to something that resembles what it actually is, which is super important to the kids in care.
Mm. And that really, I feel like, from what I know from you, has come out of a need of you stepping into this role and seeing, wow, we're kind of left to our own devices of figuring out how we mentor kids in these programs. Is that a correct way to maybe frame that up?
Yeah. So what I want to develop is a training and supervision model that can help them learn to better do their jobs. The state of California has designated a whole bunch of different trainings that must be done annually, but most of them do not help them learn how to do their job better. And the trainings that I'm coming up with will actually help them learn how to do their jobs better.
I feel like that's probably so applicable no matter what industry you're in. You go through these credentials and the trainings, and then when you actually get in the job, you're like, oh, dang, I didn't learn anything about what I need to do this job and their certification process. So I feel like everybody out there can totally relate to what you're saying. So can you give me an example, Beverly, of just from a high level perspective, if somebody wanted to work in a residential treatment program, whether that is from recovery or foster care, like you're in, what is something that you're not taught in the accreditation program that you wish was more widely taught?
Well, my whole philosophy of milieu therapy, they're all the elements of milieu therapy: consistency, setting limits, boundaries. They're all concepts, and there is so much to learn at the beginning. So there's not a lot of room for this, but um, they don't learn how to set personal boundaries. They don't learn how to talk to the kids. I
Yeah.
mean, that's one of the most, I mean, some people naturally can do that, but others who are more reserved or shy may have a hard time, and it can be scary for them. So, how to talk to the kids isn't taught at all. And we do more than 24 hours of initial training, and it's basically not in there because there's no room for it.
Right.
But
But
it's really important.
it is important. You're raising humans in a way, and these humans that you're coming in contact with are probably some of the most traumatized teens that you could probably find. And so I think at the end of the day, they really want an adult to model for them what it's like to be an adult. And sometimes that's not fun because you have to be the no person. Uh, so
Mhm.
what are some of the the feedback, because you're talking with teenagers regardless of what situation. You could be in the most textbook case perfect scenario. Teenagers are teenagers. So what are some of the responses that the teens give when you're introducing this type of protocol or therapy to them? Are they receptive to it? Do they say, hey, thanks? Or are they like every other teen and you just find later maybe it's working?
Well, the thanks are kind of rare, so you have to savor them when you get them. But I think basically one of the key things to remember that we don't necessarily teach staff is that if they're acting out, if they're yelling at you, if they're saying um, nasty things to you, it is not about you, but it is all about their personal trauma and the anger, the hurt, the pain that they have. So that is really important to remember. And even me, sometimes I've been doing this for so long, one of those little darts will get in there,
Yeah.
and I kind of know I have to remove myself. And that's another important thing to teach, is that if you feel yourself getting upset, if you feel yourself getting angry back, um, you have to remove yourself and call on your coworker who's on shift with you, kind of do a tag team and switch out.
Mm. Yeah, you know, that makes me really feel so deeply for the people in the world that are single parents or mostly single parents because they don't have that person that they can necessarily tag team out with. They have to kind of double down on the tools, which is not really easy. But I feel like the kids that come into Milestone House are lucky because they get multiple adults. There's 24 hours of adult supervision there. They're never left unattended, and there's mental health provided. So mental health wasn't always something that you provided at Milestone House, and now we're also very well aware of what mental health is. And can you describe to me the process of bringing the mental health treatment into Milestone House?
Well, it was called the Continuum of Care Reform. It took about 5 years to implement. So there was a lot of writing for me, but fortunately, I like writing. So we had to redo our whole program, about 500 pages of documents, had to submit them for renewal. Then we had to go through a national accreditation. So we are accredited nationally. And then the final piece was to bring in the mental health. So we now have a clinical director, a therapist, and a mental health rehabilitation specialist. All of them see the kids at least once a week and do 2 groups a week for the kids. Prior to this, we had the kids going to offsite providers, but those providers did not know what was going on in the house, the dynamic between the kids that are there, the problems that the kids were having. So even though we did do a little brief, but the the on-site mental health team really knows very well what's going on, and they're able to confront and explore issues that the kids are having in a way an offsite therapist couldn't. They're also available for emergency mental health screening and talking to the kids 24/7. Our current clinical director got called at 1 in the morning this weekend. So that kind of hands-on um, operation is something that has really benefited the kids a great deal, and it's it's more direct, more personal, and more on point with what's going on, and it's there in a crisis.